Alrighty, here we go. After a very interesting month of playoff games, this team has blazed through the West with an overall record of 12-2. With all eyes on the prize, heavily favored as a preseason cup favorite, the Colorado Avalanche are representing the Western Conference in this year's Stanley Cup final. In this video, I'll give my reasons why I think the Colorado Avalanche will be crowned champs by the end of June, and at the end, cons of what could possibly stop them. So how'd we get here? Well, first off, they swept the Predators and outscored them 12-9 in an absolute boat race of a series. They had a miracle shot that sealed the series versus the Blues and scored with 4 seconds left to move on to the Western Conference Finals. Overmatched and outplayed the Oilers in a 4-0 sweep, scoring 22 goals while only giving up 13. They had a wonderful team comeback and moved on to the Stanley Cup Final in a Game 4 overtime winner. Which, yes, this was probably very questionable. Was it a high stick? Was it not? That's for the hockey gods to decide. So here are the reasons why I think they can potentially win the Stanley Cup. Number 1, Road Warriors. They were 7-0 on the road this playoff, and so they'll know how to go into Tampa Bay and get a win. They also, out of their 69 goals this whole postseason, 36 of them were on the road. Leverage. They swept the Predators, they took a 3-1 lead versus the Blues, and then they swept the Oilers 4-0. In every series, the amount of pressure they had on their opponents and leverage to win showed its harsh reality of how the series would eventually turn out after the first 3 games. Momentum. Right now, as it sits, before going into the Tampa series, the Avalanche have won 5 straight and also have outscored their opponents 25-15. Being down doesn't last too long. No lead is safe for these guys. They were down to the Preds only once, I believe, from looking and watching the highlights from what I remember, but it only took them about 5 minutes to tie and then get the lead. Versus the Blues, they were down many times. I mean, they lost 2 games that series. That was probably the most toughest competition they had in this playoffs alone. But the best way to summarize the series versus the Blues was in Game 4, they were down and losing. It seemed like the Blues would even the series at 2 apiece, but then they scored 4 straight goals to win 6-3. And then lastly, in the elimination Game 4 versus the Oilers, they were down 3-1 going into the third, but eventually won in overtime. Speed. Hockey is a game of speed, and McKinnon has it. He has single-handedly, in each game of all these series versus the Preds, Blues, and Oilers, has gone coast to coast with perfect handles and scored. His 11 goals alone leads the Avalanche offensive scoring. And bonus, he also had a hat trick versus the Blues. Offense. In a quick playoff run of only 15 games and a record of 12-2, the Avalanche have scored 69 goals. And as a bonus, that's more than Tampa Bay's 55. And lastly, make you pay. What I mean by this is, generally speaking, if you are outnumbered on a line change, yes, you are going to give up a goal. But these guys straight up take your lunch money also. There were multiple scramble turnovers in the Blue Series, and the Avs took advantage of it. In Game 3 of the Western Finals, the Avalanche turned the tide in a crucial Game 3 on a scramble play, and they took the lead and eventually won the game to take a huge 3-0 lead in the Western Conference Finals. So I talked about all the pros and keyed in on some of the reasons why I think that the Avalanche could be the Stanley Cup champions. With pros, there also comes cons, and so here are my reasons why I don't think they could be able to win it. Number 1, goalkeeping. Goalies are not perfect. If there was a goalie out there that could stop over 100 shots a game and only give up a goal, here or there, and have their average be under 1 goal a game, any, and I mean any organization would pay hand over fist for this brick wall to sit in front of its net for 82 games this season. With that being said, the Avalanche have goalkeeping struggles just like everybody else. Whether it's Darcy or Pavel on net, no lead is safe. My examples of this is in Game 4 versus the Blues. They're up 4-1, but they let them gain momentum and get back into the game 4-3. In Game 5, still versus the Blues, they blew a 3-0 lead late in that game and eventually lost 5-4 in overtime on home ice. They couldn't even hold a 4-3 lead in the final 2 minutes after McKinnon put the team on his back and went coast to coast and tried to seal the series. Then lastly, in Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, they were up by 4 goals at one point, but that game ended a lot closer than it seemed in the final stat. Outnumbered. All teams have moments they struggle on defense. One weakness, along with goalkeeping, that I found out about the Avalanche as I watched some highlights was their breakaway defense. 2-on-1, 3-on-1. Anytime there was a mad scramble or a defensive line change, this defense stunk. And more times than not, it ended up with a goal behind Kemper. And the last con, hype. With all things considered that this team has done, all the accolades, this postseason success, and the most recent hype behind this team, could this be too much? Is the pressure of how well this team has played since 2020 be the reason why this team crumbles? Be why they don't get power play stops late in the third period? Could this be why they don't amount to the narrative of Cup favorites to win it all? Could all of the journalism and analytics and stats be a little too much for the Avalanche to get over that hump and be Stanley Cup champions? Sometimes hype doesn't favor the team that's fortunate enough to receive it. In closing, this team has a lot of hype behind it, and they are on a tear to get Lord Stanley's Cup back to Colorado after 21 years. Personally, yes, I do think they can do it. They seem destined to etch their name on the cup, but only the games will tell. We must see how they respond to Tampa Bay, who, by the way, have history on the line as well, as back-to-back champs trying to capitalize and get a three-peat. There's a lot on the line for this series. And who knows, though? We still have to play a full series. It's hard to predict the outcome of this one because of how evenly matched these teams seem. May the best team win. Thanks for watching.